Good morning, YouTube. It's 10 a.m. in the great state of Texas, and it is also December. It's the holiday season, and I decided I wanted to make something that I've seen other woodworkers do, and that's like a cool little lamp project. So I thought, what better way than to use these little light bright pegs, and if you're old, you might remember this toy. I remember it when I was a kid. I think we had one light bright when I was growing up, and of course we lost all of the pegs. But I decided to pick some up on Amazon. Had this Pinecone from like 2-3 years ago, and I'm just gonna make a cool little light bright peg project. And I thought that's what this was gonna look like. And all good ideas never turn out the way you ever imagined them to in the end. So we got some 15-minute epoxy, took those light bright pegs, glued them up on this pine cone, and it looks pretty cool. I gotta say, I was pretty happy with this part. Knowing what I know now, I probably would have used a smaller pine cone because this pine cone's a little big for what I initially wanted it for, but it still looks really cool, and I'm really happy how that turned out. So I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna just put some 15-minute epoxy on the bottom, glue it down, and then put a bunch of epoxy in it and see how it goes. Fun fact about this project, I actually did this epoxy pour like back in, I want to say August. So from August all the way till now, I haven't even touched this project. It's been like curing in my bedroom. So mixing up some East Coast resin on this one, and I already know before we even start the pour that this is a lot of epoxy. I'm going to regret this later. That's why I'm drinking my beer there in the corner. And you notice that I'm in shorts and a short t-shirt. So this is how you know that I did this project back in August, because it was hot. And it only started to recently cool down here in Texas. But that's a whole different story. So we poured the epoxy over it. We're going to put it in the pressure pot for about 4.5 hours, like we typically do. And this is literally like 3 or 4 months later, like literally this weekend. I'm like, okay, let's get to this project. It's Christmas. I initially wanted this to be a Christmas project, so that's why I'm putting it out here in December. So this is literally like 3 months of curing on a shelf, and I'm just ripping this apart because I know I can't save the actual container, and I'm chiseling it out of its mold. But I'm like, okay, we'll just get off most of that material that we don't need and put it on the lathe and see what happens. So I knew what I wanted to do. It's one of those times where it's like I didn't know how to go about doing it. So I'm kind of just like all over the place when I did this. So I'm like, okay, let's put some 15-minute epoxy together, slap some boards on the top and the bottom, put it in the lathe, and just see what we can do. And that was the plan. I really didn't have like a plan of how to go about doing this because I've done these little projects with pine cones before in the past, and things just don't go my way. And already, like, this is sped up, but the amount of violent shaking that my lathe was doing, I was like, okay, we have some obvious problems. Nothing was centered. That was probably a big part of it. But I was like, okay, I've seen this before, and I'm trying to start, and I can't. And then there it is right there. You notice giant chunks of like epoxy shooting out, hitting me in the arm. Wear your safety protection because this is just giant shards of epoxy coming off the lathe at me. I'm like, okay, this is definitely not working out the way I envisioned, and I'm going to have significant problems, and that's not going to work. So I'm like, okay, plan B. Let's put the faceplate on, and you can already see that those pine boards that are on the side are not leveled. So I'm like, okay, great. So came back, put the faceplate on it, had a ton of hot glue, just hoping that nothing flies off the lathe and hits me in the face. So then we do this, and we're pretty much getting the same result. And I'm like, okay, at this point I'm almost ready to quit, but I'm like, okay, just mow through. Mentally, I was not in a good headspace when I did this. I was kind of stressed out on Friday when I started this project, so I'm really glad I kept my cool during this project because most of the time I'll just punch the lathe, get really upset, and just stop. And there was another giant shard. You can see the size of that thing. Wear your face shield, people. It will save your face and your body. So that came off the lathe, and I'm just like, okay, I just need to stop. I just need to quit. I just need to do something else. But I'm like, no. We're not going to quit. We're going to keep going. I'm an experienced wood turner. I just got to work the process. So we sped the lathe, not sped the lathe up, but we started the lathe back up, and all I did was eat an elephant, one bite at a time. And surprisingly, this didn't take as long as I initially thought. Once we started to work off the material and get everything balanced, things started to go a whole lot smoother. So I'm glad I didn't give up, because believe me, after that first incident, I already knew we were going to have significant problems. And then as that last giant shard came off, I was just like, you know what, screw it. We're gonna do something different. But I'm glad we kind of stuck with this project, because it doesn't turn out the way I envisioned, but it does turn out pretty good for what I wanted it to be. And every time I've done one of these desk toys, the problem is flipping it on the lathe and making a mortise and having everything stay together. Because when the epoxy starts to shred like that, all it's going to take is one small little hit of the chisel, and then everything just kind of cracks, which I've had that happen before. But this one was just way different. And maybe it's because I let the epoxy cure up too much. I have no idea, but actually I think it was a good thing that the epoxy set up for 3 months, because once we did start working off the material, you can see those just good ribbons that were getting off. The material came off really well, and you can see I'm trying to make like a cone shape here, and we're being pretty successful with it. My biggest fear was that 15-minute epoxy, it's good for some stuff, but it does not cure in 15 minutes. As no matter how well you mix it, what the temperature is, just a whole lot of problems with it a lot of the time. So that was my fault. Not that it's not a good product, but sometimes it just doesn't adhere the way you want to. And I think that's why I got a lot of shift with those pine boards initially when I put those on. But so far into the project, I'm pretty happy with where we're at. Things are well balanced. You can see me, putting my tool on top of the actual epoxy itself, and it's pretty smooth. There's no violent turning, which is really, really good. Now, this was the delicate part of it, because I knew I was getting toward the point of no return here, because I had to make a mortise. But pine cones, if you've ever turned pine cones in resin, it's just a problem every time I have to do it. You should go back and watch an old video of mine where I try to do pine cones in resin, and it just shattered the entirety of my resin project. So at this point, got a mortise, got it flipped on the lathe. Now we just have to work off this material, which, this is another part where I was concerned, because I was worried that lip there by the tailstock, that I was going to nick something and a giant shard is going to fly off and hit me in the face and then crack the entire rest of the project. But we just took our time, and I think that's part of today's video, is just taking your time. And like I was saying earlier, I was just not in a good headspace when I started making this video, and I was stressed out about other things, and I just wasn't there mentally. But we stuck with it, and that's the important thing. So we got all that material worked off. You can see the really good camera work I'm doing here. Just kidding, it's not really good camera work. I'm just getting in the way of the project a lot of the time. But getting that nice dome kind of shape, and I'm pretty happy where this is at. It's a little wobbly, a little uneven. I can feel that on the chisel, but got that cool egg shape, and I'm pretty happy with where that ends up. And you can see here all the shapings that kind of went with this project. Just tons of stuff everywhere. But overall, we're going to get that cleaned up, and then we're going to do my favorite part, which is, everybody knows, is sanding, because sanding is amazing. So starting from 340, and then we went up to 1,000, and then I'm going to come back and hit it with a micro mesh. And this is a large piece of epoxy. Like I was saying earlier, I should have done a smaller pine cone, because this is just huge, and it kind of takes away from the aesthetic. So I got some black walnut, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna build a base. That's what I'm gonna do. Actually, I ordered a light off of Amazon. This was an entire project that I built in my head. And you're asking, what the hell are you doing here? Putting more epoxy on it. So I wanted to do an epoxy finish. And for the most part, it turned out really good. I took some Total Boat 1-to-1 tabletop resin and put it on top. I should have spent more time popping those damn bubbles, but it's so cold here in Texas right now that at the end you'll be able to see a lot more of them. But really happy that I did that. I think I'm going to do that a lot more in some other projects. So here we go, black walnut, putting this onto the lathe, getting this screwed down. I don't think I've ever worked with black walnut, but this is a really nice wood. It turned really easy on the lathe, and all we're doing is building a base. I've seen other woodworkers do this. go watch Nick Zametti on YouTube. He's also a pro woodworker. He actually has like real talent and knows what he's doing. He's made some of these lamp type resin projects before. His projects are really cool. I'd go check him out. But now we're just turning the mortise, and I did this as shallow as humanly possible, just so that I didn't take off a lot of material, because once I flip it onto the lathe, that's when things get a little bit tricky. So just sanding it, I think we went from 50 grit all the way up to 340. So all we're going to do is flip this onto the lathe, and then we're going to start making room for our little lamp in the bottom of the base of this. And this part didn't take any, time at all. Once we got this down, now the biggest part is just getting a nice depth to our lathe. You can see there, everything is nice and smooth, and I'm just coming back and hitting it one more time before we actually start the gouging part of it, which doesn't take any time at all. So what I'm doing here is just setting it up large enough, and you can't see it because it's sped up, but there's a little, it's about a 2-inch light there. That's a little bit bigger than that. It's probably like 3-inch light. And I'm just trying to get to a nice depth so that we can insert the light, and then we'll come back. And what I'm doing here is trying to get to a depth to where we can get to the very bottom without punching through the mortise. So that's kind of important here. And then we hit a nice depth, and then we're just doing some cleanup work here. And then I'm taking the drill, and I did not gauge appropriately how big the actual light plug was, so I have to come back and hit it 3 more times with 3 different drill bits, and that last one we finally got, and it finally fit through. So all of our electronics fit through it, and the light will fit nice and snug. So now we're building a base for our piece of resin to sit on top that it will illuminate. And this was really easy. This didn't take any trouble at all, not at all. So again, coming back and sanding it 50 to 340, and then we're going to hit it with some new woodworking products, because this is our 6th year on YouTube that we're working on now. Yorkshire grit. I've always wanted to use this stuff. I see Nick Zametti and some other wood turners use this, and it's just a polishing paste, and it really just feeds into that wood. It looks really, really good. Once the wood sops all that up, you can see the grain really come out, and we'll just use that and polish it up. And then we're going to come back and finish up with some Shellac wax. Thanks to Nick Zametti again for this one. I've seen him use this for years, and I'm like, finally got around to actually ordering it and getting it. So really, really nice product. It's just trying to step up our woodworking here a little bit on the channel. But once we got that done, this is actually this morning. I did this because I had to let the epoxy cure because I didn't have enough time. Once I did that, the outer, the epoxy finish was not planned. So that took more time than I imagined. But our light fits nice and snug. I plugged everything in. Everything works. And then we come back and put our pine cone on it. And I'm like, okay, pretty happy how this looks. And then we're going to go ahead and turn on the light here in just a second. Waiting. Here we go. Eventually, boom. There it is. And the camera really doesn't do it justice. It looks really cool. I just... The light is a little brighter. Actually, it's about the right brightness, but I'm happy how this looks. You can see there, unfortunately, there's some micro bubbles that are in it. You can probably see that from the thumbnail as well. But overall, I'm really happy how this turned out. It didn't have this bright illumination that I thought it was going to have, but it's generation 1 of this pine cone, and for generation 1, I gotta say, it turned out pretty good. I was pretty happy how this looks. I think we could have done better, but you learn from all these projects, and sometimes you just got to make the mistakes. But overall, really happy. I'm glad we stuck with it. I'm in a bit of a better headspace today, so hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you guys get something out of it. A little bit of a longer video, but I'm going to try to do some better stuff on this channel. But overall, pretty good. So hope you guys like it, and I'll check you guys out in the next one. All right, peace. Okay, so project is done. So you guys saw through that outro kind of what it looks like. It doesn't illuminate the way I kind of envisioned, but it still looks really cool. I wish I would have done. Actually, there are air pockets in that epoxy, and you can see the little bubbles, but given what all the problems were of this project, this totally turned out better than I thought. It's generation 1 of this pine cone, so I'm kind of like, we can maybe do some other things with it a little bit later on, but I'm really happy how this turned out. Today is actually December, you guys are watching this 2 hours from this outro, December 10th of 2023. Just a ton of problems on this one. This is our first project of after the birthday, so I really like this project. We made a cool stand with it. It illuminates. In theory, it works. It looks pretty cool. It's a cool little desk toy you could put up, set up somewhere. I still like it. I'm really happy how this turned out. But overall project, a lot of problems, obviously. You saw that. But we're just going to get better at doing this. So here is the Pinecone project. First project after our YouTube birthday. So hope you guys liked it. Hope you enjoyed it. It's cold here in Texas. It's 48 degrees. I know. For Texans, this is cold, okay? Even though we had Snowmageddon like a couple of years back. But it's 48. I've been colder. But hey, we only have 2 temps here. It's either balls hot or freezing balls cold. So either way, I'm going to get back in the shop. I got to edit this video. Hopefully have it out by 10. But project's done. Persevered, got it done. So anyway, I'm going to stop rambling and hope you guys have a good day. And I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, peace.